we're going to go ahead and get started because it's 1 o'clock. I want to welcome everybody to the Pfizer committee meeting for today. Just to kind of give you a little bit of introduction, Dr. Rosat, how do you say your last name? I'm sorry. How do you say your last name?
Raitano.
Raitano. I'm the chair of the Pfizer committee. I'm Angela Lawson. We have Councilmember Jurinsky. She's the vice chair. And I think I also see Councilmember Mercano, and he's the Ward 4 council member. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We have no consent items. Approval of the minutes. Councilmember Jurinsky, do you approve the minutes?
I do.
Okay, so we'll move those forward. Okay, welcome. And thank you for coming to our Pfizer committee and giving us an update with Dr. Cog. I know being on council, we work with you guys a lot on many projects, and this collaboration is really important for our city. So we'll let you go ahead and get started.
Thanks, Angela. I'm going to actually have our executive director, Doug Rex, kick it off.
Did you want to introduce? I only had your name here, so I don't mean to be disrespectful. Did you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Flo Raitano. I'm the Director of Partnership Development and Innovation at Denver Regional Council of Governments. And joining us also today is Doug Rex, our Executive Director, Sheila Lynch, the Director of Regional Planning and Development, and also Jacob Rieger, who is in our Transportation Planning and Operations team.
Okay. Well, welcome to all of you to our meeting, and I really appreciate you taking time out of your day. So we'll go ahead and I think you have a presentation and get to it.
Doug, you want to start it off?
Well, I just might say, yeah, as you're pulling that up, maybe I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here today. And I'm pretty sure I'm looking at the list here that most of you probably are familiar enough with Dr. Cog that I don't have to go into any great detail. But we are a voluntary association of local governments, and we're so appreciative of the support that the city of Aurora has provided to us through the years. You know, the only thing I'll say about Dr. Cog, it's very hard to explain what we are, right? We're not local government, we're not state government, we're, you know, kind of this quasi-governmental agency type of thing. But the true genius of what we are is that it's the only time, in our case, in this region, that 58 local governments locally elected officials get together and discuss anything, right? And that's pretty cool on its face. And, you know, granted, we concentrate on a couple of real big key items, most notably transportation planning and older adults. But we also concentrate on the physical growth and development of our region. And you'll hear a little bit about that in some of our upcoming work associated with housing. So we're very excited to be here today. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back to Flo, but I'll be here in case there's any questions. Thank you.
Terrific, thanks. And hopefully you're seeing my screen. Great. So I wanted to start a little bit. Normally I would give this presentation over the course of about 45 minutes to an hour. So it's a bit of a whirlwind given the issues that we're currently dealing with. But and I'm also going to say I think it might be advisable to the group to hold questions till the end of the presentation so we can cover all the material given in the time frame that we're in. So these are the topics that we want to talk about today, and a lot of them are new, like brand new, and this is what Liz asked us to talk about, so we're happy to do that today. Before I do that, a few factoids about Dr. Cog, fun facts that some people don't know. We're one of the 3 oldest COGs in the nation. Denver Mayor Quig Newton convened Adams, Arapahoe, and Jeffco to form what would become Dr. Cog way back in 1955. Our footprint is about the same size as the state of Connecticut. We have 49 municipalities and 9 counties and a portion of Weld County as members. And our elevation range is over 10,000 feet because we've got Gray's Peak, which is one of the 14ers in the state, all the way out to Badger Creek, which is down around 4,500 feet in elevation. So that's quite an elevation change. Well, let me talk about the SEDS. And the SEDS is a comprehensive economic development strategy. It's a creature of the Economic Development Administration, EDA, which is part of the U.S. Department of Commerce. And we got the green light from the board last month to pursue making a SEDS for the region. We were asked to do this really by the Office of Economic Development and International Trade because they're working on a statewide SEDS and their intent, just to make life easy, is to roll up all the regional sets into the statewide document. So we said, okay, let's talk about this. But these are the elements of the sets. You see the summary background, that's kind of a snapshot in time of where we are. The SWOT analysis, everybody still does a SWOT analysis, I find. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Looking at identifying elements to go into a strategic action plan, those are things like affordable housing, workforce development, broadband, intergenerational transfer of wealth, creating wealth opportunities for our residents. And then create an evaluation framework, because what gets measured gets done. And so that's going to be an important component of it. And then recently, EDA has asked their entities to begin to focus on economic resilience and how do we prepare for the unexpected and bounce back quickly and stronger from that. So those are kinds of the elements of the SEDS. These are the EDA investment priorities. They expect that SEDS will look at all of them, maybe not in the same level of detail, but we do know that they have a very strong emphasis on certain elements like equity, workforce development, recovery, and resilience, and so we'll be keying in on some of those. But it's going to be a fast ride, and this is our timeline, and you'll notice that we're talking about having this done by the end of December of this year, not next year, this year. And planning the celebration in January with our board. We have a leadership team in place, and it's a cast a pretty broad net, but we have 6 DRCOG board members that serve on that leadership team, and that's Broomfield, Golden, Douglas County, Lakewood, Thornton, and Meade. So, we've gone up north, we've gone down south, we've gone to the west, and kind of covered the bases. We have other aspects that we're looking to cover: the Hispanic Chamber, the Asian Chamber, Women's Chamber, the Black Business Initiative, manufacturing, some of our larger employers, Lockheed Martin, Port Colorado, Excel. They're all part of the leadership team, and they're helping us identify a stakeholder team. So, even though a lot of our members may not be on that leadership team, there will be roles for them to play going forward. So that was SEDS in under 5 minutes. And next on the agenda is the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Some people also refer to it as the Bipartisan Investment Law, the bill. The Office of Economic Development and International Trade went around the state to every council of government and said, we would like to provide funding for you to hire a regional grants navigator, because the IIJA programs are legion, and they're complicated, and they're all over the map. And we know that a lot of our communities don't have the capacity to actually go after some of the funding. So there's actually about 70 programs in IIJA that are direct from federal to local governments. And by local governments, we don't just mean municipalities and counties. This program is also open to school districts, special districts like fire districts, that type of thing. So we are recommending coordination at the county level, if that's possible, using our sub-regional forum model. And we think that the reason for doing that is if there are multiple entities that are looking at applying for the same funding, maybe there's a way to partner them up, buddy them up, so they make an even more compelling application. And that's why the conversation there. We have contracted with EST Inc., and many of you know a very familiar face, Paul Gisitis, who was RTD for Region 1, CDOT, and he landed at EST. And Richard Zamora, who is also at CDOT, is also part of the team there. So, friendly face, familiar face that knows the region. And I will say that they have done yeoman's work in the heavy lifting of understanding things well beyond transportation. Because we're looking at broadband, we're looking at water, we're looking at solid waste, we're looking at brownfield mitigation. We're looking at affordable housing, broadband. There's a lot of things. And Paul has really invested a lot of brain cells in understanding what's out there. So feel free to reach out directly to Paul at EST, or you can always contact me and we'll get you where you need to be. So I'm going to turn it next to Sheila to talk about the regional housing strategy.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sheila Lynch. Can you hear me okay? Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for giving this opportunity. I'm going to walk us through some work we are embarking on related to a regional housing strategy. And we can go to the next slide. So our board has been in deep discussion about how does housing integrate into the work we're doing at DRCOG. And it's probably been taking this on for the last 2 years in different spaces and in different contexts. And at our last board retreat, which was in May, we really zeroed in on what are the key elements that we want to make sure that we address in this work. And one of the key pieces was that we want to make sure that whatever work we do around housing is really informed by existing plans, programs, and initiatives that are underway. We certainly don't want to duplicate any of the work that is already the great work that's happening in our local governments. And we also want to make sure that we're doing a good job of understanding how do the things that we take on around housing as a region really complement our work in transportation and other planning areas. The other thing our board really spent a lot of time talking about is that it's important that we understand what's that problem we're trying to solve and how do we align strategies that can adequately and effectively do that. We recognize that a piece of this work is certainly going to be informing policy, both at the local level and state level. And so we really feel like understanding what's happening at a regional scale will help us do that. And of course, our regional plan, Metro Vision, is a great starting point. We already, as a regional planning council, we have already started to talk about housing, and it's in our regional plan. But what we hope to do is just dive deeper in order to really understand what are the strategic steps we can take for implementation. Next slide. So part of what we did to really understand what would a regional housing assessment and strategy development look like is we looked to other regions. So we had a lot of conversations with regions across the country to really understand how have they taken on this work. And one thing we've learned is that they have all done it slightly differently. And so the wonderful thing we could do is take some elements from all that we learned and recognize what would work best in our Denver region. And so we, thought deeply about, so what are those pieces that really make sense for Denver, but also make sense for Denver at this juncture? And certainly a regional view would be helpful. Many of our local governments have already taken on looking at doing some housing assessment and housing planning. Some, like the city of Aurora, have been doing it for years. And so one of the things that where we could add value as a council of governments is how do we look at that regional scale? We also learned from many of the regions across the country that taking some time to understand the submarkets is really critical for developing key strategies. Many of the other regions looked at the role of a regional council is really about gathering resources and information and sharing that broadly across local governments. And engagement was a big piece to all of the regions that we spoke to, and making sure that we have engagement both at the assessment level, but also as we develop strategies. And one of the things we're really committed to is how do we align our work around housing with the transportation investments that are already underway and are planned for the future. And the one thing that we heard many regions say is that planning is wonderful, but if we don't really think about dedicated funding and clear, solid implementation strategies, we don't want to get to a point where we can't implement some of the strategies we've developed. Next slide. So a little bit about what we're planning. So after much look at what's the best way to get this started, we certainly recognize that some time to assess what's happening at the regional scale is important. And so we plan to start with some assessment. Included in that assessment is we are calling some systems analysis. So understanding what's working, what's not working from a regional perspective. We've started by looking at all of the housing needs assessments and plans that have already taken place at the local government level across the region. And we're trying to do some analysis to understand what are those commonalities and those themes coming out of the work that's already done. And then where are those opportunities for working regionally? And we plan to take on that assessment work and really have a deliverable early in 2024, because we recognize that there's probably going to be conversations in the spring at the state level around some policy initiatives. And hopefully we will have some information and data to inform those conversations. We'll continue with that assessment, and we hope to have the assessment phase wrapped up next summer. And then the second piece of that is walking into strategy development. And that's where the next two gears on this slide really focus on, is understanding what are some really feasible and actionable strategies we can take at the regional level that are not duplicative of what's happening at the local level, but will complement and add value to what's happening at the local level. And then ultimately, by the end of 2025, we would like to have some defined prioritized strategies that we can integrate into our regional plans. Because by integrating it into the work we already do in our regional planning, we know that it can continue to be a part and a priority for us as a region. And I think that might be my last slide.
Well, Jayla Sanchez-Warren, the director of our Area Agency on Aging, wasn't able to join us today, but we did want to highlight some of the services that we provide from the other AAA, as we sometimes refer to it. And so these data points are pulled specifically from July 2022 through May of this year, and these numbers are specific to the city of Aurora. So you can see that the largest line item really is making sure that our seniors get fed, and then the next biggest need is, of course, for transportation. And that leads us to say thanks to you. We greatly appreciate the partnership with the city of Aurora in augmenting what we are able to do. And the number that you saw there, the 21,477 trips, includes these. But these are additional trips that we were able to provide for residents of Aurora, and this allowed us to serve many more older adults. And then this is kind of the laundry list of the additional services we make available to older adults living in your fair city. And I'd like to call out in particular the older adult refugee services line item. It's one of the staff favorites here at DRCOG, and they spend a lot of time working in Aurora with your sizable refugee population. And then there's also the partnership with Nimble Science, which is pretty cool, because we make available an app on smartphones that actually helps train or retrain older brains to improve balance and prevent falls, and that's a very good thing. So contact me or Jayla if you would like any additional information on any of these, but particularly on the mobile fall prevention and education partnership with Nimble Science. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jacob Rieger in our Transportation Planning and Operations Division. Jacob?
Thank you very much, Flo. Can you all hear me? Yes. Okay, sorry, can you all hear me?
Yes,
Okay, good. Yeah, sorry, thank you. Audio sometimes weird on a Friday. Thank you very much. Really pleased to be here. Doing a lot of great transportation work, but in particular wanted to highlight our bus rapid transit activities and the work that we're doing with stakeholders. And actually, Flo, I'm sorry, could you go back just a slide? I'm sorry. Yeah, thank you. Because I do want to make a point here that this is a partnership. This is a regional partnership in which we're participating. It includes all of these agencies and more around the region at the staff level, including Aurora staff. And I do want to thank Public Works and Planning staff at Aurora, who have been great partners, kind of helping us both at the regional level and kind of the local level that I'll talk about. So sorry, thank you, Flo. Go ahead. All right, so just a little bit of context. Sheila referred to our long-range plan, our 2050 Regional Transportation Plan, which includes 11 bus rapid transit corridors. We defined a regional bus rapid transit network as well as a new bus maintenance facility, working with RTD and other stakeholders as we were originally developing that plan. We adopted our 2050 plan back in 2021, and then through the state greenhouse gas transportation greenhouse gas rulemaking that came down the end of 2021, we actually had to revise our plan last year. We spent about 9 months doing that to respond to the requirements of that rule. And as part of that work, we actually advanced the implementation timeline of several of the bus rapid transit corridors as part of the plan because they became part of our overall greenhouse gas planning standard compliance strategy. And not just in our plan, by the way, but CDOT's 10-year plan also includes the BRT corridors within the Denver Dr. Cog region. Some of their local plans include some of these corridors as well. CDOT also has some funds through their region-wide arterial BRT and transit improvements. So again, this is a multi-agency partnership to make this happen. Next slide. So just wanted to show you what that means when I talk about a bus rapid transit network. What does that actually mean? In our long-range plan, we defined 11 distinct BRT or bus rapid transit corridors to be implemented by 2050. We kind of staged them in kind of 10-year staging periods of when they would be implemented over time. There's also some dollars here, which gives you a sense of the scale. These are just planning level estimates. As these projects go through into further planning and project development, these cost estimates will change. But even in this 30-year look ahead, you can see the hundreds of millions of dollars over time, federal, state, local. It's going to take a lot of funding sources to do this. But I think what's really important here is just the notion of the time frame of these. We made specific commitments together as a region through this planning process, both in terms of the transportation greenhouse gas work and our federal air quality conformity requirements in terms of when the region would implement these corridors over time. And as you see, there are 5 of them by 2030. There are another 5 by 2040, and the last one by 2050. It's admittedly a very assertive sort of commitment to these corridors, but the region is coming together to make it happen. And within those corridors, those first 5 in particular that we're starting to focus on in the regional BRT partnership by 2030, I'd of course call out the East Colfax BRT that you all are well familiar with over the last several years, but also an extension of that bus rapid transit corridor from I-225 and the R line over to E-470 is one of those priority corridors as well, along with some of the other corridors that you see there that are starting to get some attention. Next slide, please. So in terms of the regional BRT partnership, the agencies I noted and more have started to come together to form this partnership, really to shepherd these BRT corridors and really sort of coordinate amongst corridors, find some efficiencies in planning, starting to look at financing, all sorts of different things that go into play when you're planning bus rapid transit. But it really is a multi-agency planning and funding and implementation partnership. And the notion here is that, as you've just seen, there's more work, especially by 2030, than any single agency could lead or do alone. We really need to do this together as a region, and the region is coming together to do it. We want to collaborate and assist multiple BRT corridors simultaneously, coordinate the work, the issues, schedules, resources. As I said, we're focusing on kind of those first 5 to be implemented by 2030. CDOT is leading 3 of those that you've seen. Denver and Aurora, of course, have been working on East Colfax. We have actually played a role in leading kind of the facilitation and kind of initial kind of stakeholder stewardship and coordination on East Colfax extension, trying to help out your staff and the other stakeholders to kind of get that process going on that corridor. So again, all hands on deck to make this work. And then we're also starting to look ahead to some of the other corridors. Another project that involves you all and Aurora is the Alameda planning study through our kind of pilot corridor planning program, starting to work on that, and then some other corridors that are in the next tranche of implementation as well. Next slide, please. So some people like words, some people like visuals. This is kind of that same slide, but just to illustrate visually in the concept of the regional bus rapid transit partnership, and then the individual kind of corridor stakeholder partnerships that either have already been established or are being established for each of these corridors, also shown by implementation timeframe and color coded for kind of that lead sort of stewardship agency as well. So next slide, which I think this might be my last slide.
It was,
Yep,
Jacob.
it is. Yep. So thank you very much, Flo.
So one of the things that Liz asked us to cover was a legislative recap, and you know, it's important to keep in mind that we are a council of governments, and so we have ground rules, said Dr. Cog, that allow us to take positions on pending legislation. But you know, these are some of those, and there's a lot of unseen prep work that goes into the very public-facing testimony and the positions we take, and while on the surface, it might seem like it's quite limiting to require a supermajority to take a position on legislation. It actually puts us in a much stronger position because if it isn't just a simple majority, but understanding that when Dr. Cog takes a position, it is a supermajority of our board members to do so. That's a fairly heavyweight position to take. So, you know, we, and by that I mean Rich Morrow, also prepare annual policy statements at both the state and federal levels. And I think Liz is intending to share this document with you, the PDF form, and the state and federal legislative policy statements are available on our website, but these are direct links to them if you want to see what we're up to. Now, this past legislative session notwithstanding, our focus typically is on issues that are dealing with the needs of older adults in our region and our transportation challenges. We spent a lot of time on things outside that scope this year, but Doug, I don't know if you'd like to add anything at this point.
Well, thank you, Flo, very much. And, you know, I think what Flo's alluding to is probably the housing conversations that were occurring at the General Assembly this year. And of course, those are related to our big core missions associated with older adults and transportation as well. You know, we were very active in that area this year. We're staying actively involved with the governor's office right now as they move forward. The regional housing strategy that Sheila mentioned earlier is kind of in response to that. At least the urgency in getting a portion of that done by the end of the year is related to conversations we expect to occur in the legislature next year as well. But for the most part, yeah, I mean, Flo's right. I mean, we spend a tremendous amount of time, most notably on advocating for older adults and the necessity for additional state funding, because, you know, our problem is not getting smaller, right? It's getting larger. I mean, seniors have now surpassed the population of young adults basically in this state, right? Those 60 and over is larger than those that is 18 and under within our state. We're the second or third fastest growing aging population amongst the states. And it's a problem that's not going away, and it needs urgent attention. So we're continuing to lobby very hard at the state capitol. And so far we're having pretty good success.
And with that, the whole team is happy to take any questions that you may have on any of the topics that we talked about today. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can go back to the Brady Bunch.
So I'm going to just start with Councilmember Jurinsky. Councilmember Jurinsky, do you have any questions on the great presentation from Dr. Cog?
I do not, but thank you for the presentation.
I just want to say this. You know, Dustin, Councilmember Zvonek, who is also a member of the Pfizer committee, I think he sits on the committee as well. What I found interesting, and for me, I'm going to do a little bit more reach out to your organization, is regarding older adults. I didn't realize that you had so much input in there. I wasn't really aware of that. So a lot of the information that I'm getting, especially on that, today, as I know that city council just approved $170,000 for a pilot for transportation. I know that we have a commission that actually comes and does advisory for the city council. I didn't really realize that you guys were actually, this board was really doing a lot on that issue, and I really thank you for that. And for me, I will be reaching out because I really wasn't aware of that from really city staff as well. I know that we got some studies about transportation. I know that there were some things from Dr. Cog that you guys were doing with older adults, but I didn't even know from a policy standpoint of what you were advocating for. And with our board member, I definitely know I want to make sure that as we're moving through the next legislative session, that we're kind of seeing what you're aligning with, because as you stated, our population is not getting any younger, it's aging. So thank you. So for me, this was very good to know that. So I know where some efforts need to go as far as where I see in the city we need to address. So
That's
thank you so
wonderful.
much for that.
Well, I was
I'm
just going to
sorry, I
say
didn't
real
give my
quick.
long spiel, so.
No, that's wonderful. And we'd be happy to sit down with you and
Okay.
whoever else would be interested and go through a more comprehensive review of the programs that we have and our advocacy role and all that kind of good stuff. We're so proud of this side of our shop, and we're certainly not shy to share.
Okay, well, you'll be hearing from me. I'll be
Perfect.
sending an email because I do want to sit down with you about the older adults for sure.
Great.
So
Thank you.
I know that we have Councilmember Mercano. Councilmember Mercano, do you have any questions from the presentation?
Not at this point, but I also want to share my gratitude for y'all coming in and sharing, giving us an update. So thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you all for that. I really appreciate the presentation and all of you taking time. You definitely will be hearing from me, and thank you for giving us, especially, I would really like to maybe, especially being the Pfizer chair, and we can work with Liz of what kind of some of the policy things or legislative items that you're thinking about looking into for the next legislative session for older
That'd be
adults.
wonderful. Yep. We
Okay.
would appreciate the input.
Okay, well, you'll be hearing from me soon. So thank you so much. I appreciate you all.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Me too.
Cheers.
Okay, Lori, federal state legislative update.
Good afternoon, everyone. Let's start off with appropriations. The House has passed out of committee 10 of its 12 appropriation bills. As a reminder, Congressman Crow was able to secure 2 of our projects, $3 million for the World Public Library and $850,000 for the 9-mile pedestrian bicycle bridge. And the $3 million, I must say, was very impressive. That was a really large value. I did not see that many earmarks with that high of a value. The average was around 700, 800,000. So I thought that was great. The only 2 bills left are Labor HHS Education and Commerce Justice Science. They left the last 2 controversial bills to consider at the very end. When they come back in September, hopefully they're able to get through those 2 bills and then start bringing appropriation bills on the floor. The end of the fiscal year is September 30th, so there's no way Congress will be able to pass all 12 bills. So we're probably looking at a continuing resolution, CR, which would continue to fund the government at current funding levels. However, the House, there's a group of Republicans who would like to set the CR at a lower funding level than current funding levels. So we're going to see how this all plays out. Speaker McCarthy would have to get a number of Democrats to help push the CR over the finish line. So we'll see what happens. On the Senate side, they are working through their appropriation bills as well. Yesterday, they passed their Transportation HUD appropriations bill, as well as energy and water. And so I raised the Transportation HUD bill because Senators Hickenlooper and Senators Bennett did put forward several of our projects as well, but unfortunately they were not listed in the Senate bill. However, I noticed that with a number of other clients, if the project was listed in the House bill, they were not listed in the Senate bill. So it sort of be doubling up. But the Senate is considering its interior appropriations bill next week. And both of the senators submitted 2 of our projects, one for replacing the lead pipelines and the other for doing sort of an assessment of your pipelines as well. So we'll see if it's included in that. So I'm hopefully those 2 projects will be included, or at least one of them will be included. This past week, the House passed the FAA reauthorization bill, and I'll raise that because it provides a record amount of funding for airports across the country, including, of course, Denver International. One thing I thought was interesting, I sort of was sad about this, they did not allow additional flights directly out of DCA. So I was hoping for y'all, there'd be another one for Denver. So you don't have to go to Dulles, but they did not allow that on the House floor, which is sort of surprising. The Senate Commerce Committee is going to begin considering its bill, hopefully next week. And the chairwoman has said she is considering additional slots on the DCA. So fingers crossed, maybe United flight slot for Denver. As well, the Congress is also working on the Farm Bill. And 1 second, sorry about that. I wanted to go through a couple grants that are out right now. The first one is Protect. And this is a brand new program that was created in the infrastructure bill, IIJA, for climate resiliency, extreme weather events such as flooding or seismic. So I know your team, I've shared it with your team, and I know they are looking at that. Another grant is called Reconnecting Communities and Neighborhoods Grant Program. As a reminder of those who y'all went to DOT a couple months ago, they raised this as a potential program for a couple of your projects, including one in your district, Councilmember Marcano, I recall. So I know your staff is looking at that. There's over $3 billion available for this program. So I do think it'd be a great opportunity for the city. And then lastly, the RAISE grant program, which you've been successful in securing funding before in the previous administration. That NOFO, Notice of Funding Opportunity, is coming out in September, which I also have flagged for your Public Works team, so you're ready for it. So any questions?
Councilmember Jurinsky, no questions? Okay. Thank you, Lori, for that update. And I'm hoping that we definitely will be looking into some of these grant opportunities. I know the community one, when I went to National League of Cities, that one was promoted highly. So
Right.
I hope that, you know, we look into it and see if there's something that could be beneficial. I definitely think there are some things in there that, you know, the money could be used for in the city of Aurora. So.
And just as a reminder for other city council members, the program was created to help provide access to underserved communities to transportation, recreation, jobs, and education.
Yep.
And we thought there were several neighborhoods that this program could benefit from.
Yep. Thank you for that. Councilmember Marcano, do you have any questions for Lori? Excuse me?
Oh, I said no, ma'am, but thank you for the update to Lori.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, Lori, very much for the update and the, I guess you have a very great weekend, so I appreciate you.
Okay,
Thank you so
bye.
much. Bye. Okay, now we're going to our state legislative update. So it looks like we have Cammie, Totsi, and Peggy. How are you guys?
Good. Happy Friday.
And to you. I don't know who wants to begin, but you go ahead and start.
I'm happy to jump in and start off the team. We have talked about in the past that we are now starting to do interim committees. Those are beginning. We've identified several interim committees that have gotten started, and we'll be watching those, sharing information with you and the government affairs team. A couple that we're particularly watching are transportation, sales and use tax, public safety, and we can talk a little bit about each of those. The other one I just wanted to hit on is the issue of around land use. As you recall, at the end of session, the governor's Senate Bill 213 was killed on the calendar. And there has been a commitment from legislators to come back and look at that issue and try to address affordable housing. At this point, there seems to be a bit of dueling potential legislative packages. Representative Woodrow has indicated that they, as the sponsors of Senate Bill 213 from last session, are going to bring back several bills to address some of the issues that were in Senate Bill 213. Alternatively, Senators Zenzinger, Kirkmeyer, Representative Byrd, and Puglisi are looking at legislation to also address affordable housing, but they're looking at approaching it from the strike below that was passed in the Senate. And as you may recall, the strike below was a much more tailored version of the bill. It included elements to address affordable housing, but didn't have the mandates that were really pretty offensive to some of the local government organizations in particular. So there seems to be perhaps some dueling legislation next session, still very early in discussion. So I'm hopeful that there's a potential everybody could get on the same page. One issue that has come up that was not a part of the discussions last year is around construction defects. And for those of you that have been around for some time, this has been an issue that we've been dealing with in the States since probably the beginning of the 2000s. And it's an issue that the developers and insurance companies point to as part of the increase in housing and the prices that we've had to experience. It's also limited the number of condos available and starter homes that are available. I think that issue will be much more of the discussion this year. Last year, the governor's office said, listen, we don't want to touch that part, that issue, and it can be very political. I think this year it will be a part of the discussion. So everybody's trying to figure out what in construction defects needs to be addressed that could potentially reduce the price of housing. So all that to say, discussions are starting to go on around that issue. We will keep you posted on it, but I do expect that will be another big issue in the upcoming session and during this interim, though it's not specifically a part of a committee. So with that, I'll pass it off to my cohorts and let them jump in on a couple other issues that we're watching this summer.
Howdy, I'll take it over, Peggy. Thank you. As we said last month, a number of interim committees are starting, and Transportation Legislative Review Committee starts Monday. Monday morning, they will discuss issues around towing. I don't exactly understand why they've set the stage for a whole morning on the towing issue, but that will be Monday morning. And Monday afternoon, they're discussing railroads and railroad safety. So we'll be at that hearing and we will let you know what happens there if there's anything that may affect the city. And as far as public safety, I've been talking to folks about what the city priorities may be on public safety. And we've been lucky enough to secure the folks from Human Services to come to the next FSIR meeting to talk about juvenile beds for youth detention complexes. So we'll have an update on what's going on that issue from them next month. And we are also trying to figure out POW, the possession of a weapon by previous offenders. Last year, the session ended without a bill moving forward on that. And there is no desire currently from any of the interested parties to move forward with any legislation. The AG's office took the lead on the bill last year, but they don't plan on moving anything forward. This may have been a great opportunity for CCJJ to take up, but the legislature did not support continuing that organization. So there's a void there as far as looking at some kind of issue-oriented public safety measures. That said, the governor is interested in creating some sort of entity to replace CCJJ, but it looks like that won't happen for another 2 or 3 months while the administration determines what that looks like and how to move forward. They would really like to see something in statute, but right now the legislature doesn't seem to want to support something along those lines. Street racing has been a big issue for Denver, Aurora, Westminster. You all know that. And it's one of the priorities that the city has set. But no one in public safety is planning to run legislation right now to address street racing. Everyone knows it's a safety issue, but law enforcement at this time isn't working on that. And sentencing, we've also looked at sentencing guidelines for displaying and discharging a firearm in the commission of a crime. And that there doesn't seem to be anything in the works for that as well. And this may have been an issue that CCJJ could have addressed, but there's no entity to look at that. So perhaps, as we're setting up meetings with our delegation, we can discuss some of these issues with them and get more info as to what the delegation may want to do. Do you have any questions?
I just have a question, Tatsi, is there any of the past juvenile bills that came forward last year? Well, we're still in the same year, but this last legislative session that will be returning that did not pass, but there may be some revision to it or some thoughts about trying to go in a different direction.
I don't know that, I don't have a specific answer for you.
Specifically, the
Councilmember.
one I'm talking about is the youth, the 12-year, what was that one? I think it
Oh,
was.
the age
Yes,
limitation.
Yes.
Boy, I apologize. I can't remember what happened with that bill this year. I can look that
It
up.
was Senator Coleman, I think, was one of the sponsors of that bill.
Oh, the bill that Chief Azevedo came in and testified on? That was amended heavily. Let me grab that right now and look at that while we're
Okay, I was just curious. I couldn't actually remember. It didn't
They
pass.
amended that. They amended that heavily the last couple of days. And I
I
Yeah,
thought it didn't
I
pass,
can
but-
jump in. I can jump in on that one. They did amend the bill pretty dramatically.
Okay, and it's
Um,
only for, they cut out a lot of it, I remember.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I don't know that that's going to be back. I think the discussion will continue.
Okay.
It was very controversial,
Right.
and frankly, in the end, they were lucky to get it passed because
Mhm.
I think it was kind of teed up to die in the last couple days of session. I think from some of the conservatives and moderates in the various caucuses, I think they felt like the bill went too far. And to the point of CCJJ not continuing, that forum where these discussions happen is not existing right now. There's going to be some sort of forum put in place so that there's a vehicle for these discussions, but we don't know what that's going to look like now. So I think it's still a little bit early. We'll add that to our list to check in with Senator Coleman and see if that's something that he wants to continue the discussion on. But I can imagine him letting it go for a little bit too. It's an election year and things are going to be a little bit dicey. But I'll check in with Senator Coleman for sure.
Yeah, I just want to make sure. I know it did pass, it was heavily amended, but
Yep.
sometimes it may come back as
Yes,
something else. So I just really want to keep track of some of that one in particular.
You
Or
bet.
whatever it could be.
Certainly.
Okay, sorry to interrupt. Thank you, Tatsi. Councilmember Jurinsky, do you have any questions for Tatsi on the public safety bills or anything you want to add? Okay, Cammie, you're next.
Thanks. Good afternoon, and just wanted to, with regard to one of the city's priorities being broadband, we will be watching the Joint Technology Committee very closely. They receive periodic presentations from the broadband office, so we'll be sure to send those notes off to Liz. They're meeting, I believe, August 28th in August, obviously. And then we also will be watching the Colorado Youth Advisory Council. We thought it might be of interest to Aurora just to kind of monitor youth issues, interests, and needs affecting them now and in the future. In that, the Youth Advisory Council is overseen by a task force of, I believe, 6 legislators. So we'll also be watching that, and their first meeting is August 9th.
Okay. I just have a question. I mean, there was a lot of money that floated from the federal government to cities on the broadband. And I still get constituents that are kind of saying, okay, what is the city of Aurora doing about broadband? I know that there's some stuff at the state. So can you just tell me, like, this money has filtered to the state level? I don't know how much we got in Colorado, but why is it, what is the deal with it kind of not going to jurisdictions or cities? What's the issue with that? Or is the city kind of just delaying on some of the projects or something that we can do to improve broadband, especially in areas where it's really needed?
I don't have an answer for you right now, but I'm certainly happy to look further into that and get back to you.
Okay. Can the
And
city
there's a
just,
broad,
okay.
I guess Senator, Representative, Councilwoman Lawson. I had to go through the full
Oh,
litany.
oh,
It's like
thank you.
calling your
No problem.
children.
Exactly.
Um, the broadband office has a plan on how the funding is going to be allocated. So that's something we can share with Liz as well.
Okay.
And that might help highlight what their priorities are. They've got a goal of reaching 99% connectivity in the upcoming years. So they're really focused on getting that money out the door. Happy to share that information with Liz on their plan, and their office is super accessible. So if that's something that we want to follow up with them on, they'd be happy to share what they're doing.
Okay, that might be a presentation I might want to have come forward because we've had all these dollars in here and it seems like it's just been sitting. And I'm just wondering, you know, I know that the city, we're still waiting about how they're going to deploy the money, but there is a lot of people who are in need of broadband in our neighborhoods so I'm just really, I'm really interested in kind of understanding that timeline from if we get the state dollars, how it's going to be, how much the city of Aurora is going to get in particular, and how we're going to move that money around into distressed areas that need broadband specifically. So I'll put that on my list as well, to maybe contact that office and get some more information on that. So thank you so much for your reports. Councilmember Marcano, do you have any questions on any of these updates from Cammie, Peggy, or Totsi?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Lawson. So on the broadband topic, I know that we do generally have fairly decent coverage throughout Aurora, but the issue is that it's not particularly affordable for a lot of our residents. And in some areas, the service is piss poor, if I can just be so blunt. So does this funding also allows us to basically build out like a public infrastructure and potentially sublet it, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay, I see Peggy nodding pretty, okay, good.
Yes.
And I guess what does the timeline look like for these funds again?
They're going out the door now. So they've got the funding and have a plan in place. So it's funds are available. I don't know how the city is set up, and that might be a Liz Roberto question on how we're trying to access those funds, but there is availability for sure.
Right, because so I'll piggyback on your point there, and I guess I'll put Roberto on the spot. And this is maybe more really a question for Laura or someone in, that reports to her. But I know that part of our strategy has been to, get to roll out fiber cabling as we're updating intersections and, doing other improvements in our right of ways. So I guess my question to Roberto and to management more generally would be, are we taking advantage of these funds to help us do that? Because I know that part of our biggest hurdle to do this in a timely fashion is just the cost of, getting the materials. So can you address that, Roberto?
Sure. Councilmember, I think what we're trying to do, as you identified, we're trying to get last mile. So, and changing into fiber where we have opportunities, right? So we're trying to do it strategically. Some of the parts of the city have all that, some don't, as Councilmember Lawson mentioned. So trying to match up the funds available with the criteria to the last mile and the fiber changeouts given construction or right-of-way availability, and matching those up to the funds that are being made available from the state. So what I will do is, work with Peggy and Liz and Cammie and get that strategy, whatever criteria that's being laid out, work with Scott Newman, and we will see if there's any potential programs. Ours are very specific just because we're already built out. We're not the rural broadband. We're not where folks don't have any internet at all, but some of it is just not efficient. It doesn't have high speeds. It's not in the place. So we've got to just see if we have some programs at the state that can match up with the last mile areas that we're trying to hit strategically. So I will get with them. We'll bring this back as a presentation and maybe have Scott Newman back as well. He can talk a little bit about how we're trying to meet those last mile areas.
Fantastic. And just one more, if I can add, Councilmember Lawson.
Go ahead, Councilmember Marcano.
Thank you. Does anything in this funding preclude us creating a public enterprise for broadband as well? Because I know that that's worked out pretty well for, I think it's Longmont with their NextLight service. Granted, that's a rural broadband service, or at least it was semi-rural, I guess, when they started. But, I know some of the underserved parts of our city, I think would maybe benefit from having a broadly more affordable and high quality service that we could, potentially set up. And I think that would be, a way potentially going back to for my colleagues to consider for us to generate revenue by providing a necessary service to make us a more resilient city moving into the future. So.
And just also, and just to piggyback on that, I mean, in addition to the public enterprise, I mean, I hope that the city will kind of also look with this funding, and I don't know how it would look, but maybe this will be a presentation for council of how we would maybe utilize this, is having some type of funding program or something, a portion of that money to help people that cannot, afford to have any internet, period, or just basically limited. So I'm hoping that would be something that we can do with this funding as well. But anyway, that's a broadband discussion. I'm hoping that could come back, and thank you for listening to our comments on that. So I appreciate all the updates. I look forward, as our priorities move forward, we haven't voted on those yet. I'm hoping that some of the interim committees that are related to our priorities are ones that we can actually make sure that we're looking at, that are related to the priorities as well, which I know you mentioned most of them, Peggy. So I think we're in good shape if they get approved. So, all right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And you guys have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I just have a process question we're going to do our water update. But we did do some of approval of letters. So do we have to do those formally, I'm thinking, Roberto? We did some approval of some support letters through email?
Yeah, we do need to have you guys on record just in the meeting for the minutes. So
Okay.
I don't know if Kathy wants to raise those.
Okay, Kathy, if you can just briefly state what the support letters that you sent over to council, then myself and Councilmember Jurinsky are the ones online, so we'll vote for those formally.
That'll be wonderful. And I've kind of spelled it out in the questions for each topic.
Okay.
So if we take it topic by topic, we should then cover what we've done by email.
Okay, that'll work.
Perfect. My first item, I know I'm on the bulk of the packet this month. On page 34, the first item starts with the Upper Colorado and San Juan River Endangered Fish Recovery Program reauthorization. Mm-hmm. And so every year, I think I bring this topic to you about the programs. We're usually asking for support of the annual appropriations. This request is a little bit different in that it's reauthorization of the entire programs. So these programs started in the late 1980s, and they've been supplying us with Endangered Species Act compliance for our Colorado River water sources ever since. And the programs are set to expire on September 30th of this year. And so there's an effort to just reauthorize both of those programs for now 7 years. The federal agencies involved and the Upper Colorado River Basin states involved and the water providers that depend upon these programs, they've been discussing this reauthorization for quite some time. We were hoping for a 15-year reauthorization, Unfortunately, the House congressional rules only allow for up to 7 years. And so, but we are happy that it is going forward and that there are 2 companion bills. So Representative Robert, her staff has been incredibly engaged on this topic and very helpful. They introduced House Bill 4596, and they've been working very closely with Senator Hickenlooper's office, Senator Hickenlooper and Senator Romney. They introduced Senate Bill 2247, and they've already had a hearing just yesterday on the Senate version of the bill. The House will have its first hearing on July 27th. And so we did work with you via email on some of those support letters. There was a support letter for the House legislation. There was a support letter for the Senate legislation. And then we did go forward to and request co-sponsorship from Representative Crow for the House version of the bill. And so I do have one question for you. Let's see, does FSIR approve of Aurora Water requesting support for Upper Colorado and San Juan endangered fish recovery programs, reauthorization legislation, including, and I'm just going to add this phrase, but not limited to the following: the support letter for the House, the support letter for the Senate legislation, and the request to co-sponsor from Representative Crow, Senator Bennett, and remaining Colorado delegation for reauthorization of these programs. And the reason why I want to say, but not limited to, is I know that there's going to be more requests for support letters as this makes it through the process. But it'll all be aligned and in conjunction with these bills in this effort.
Okay. Councilmember Jurinsky, do you have any questions, and do you support the letters or the content?
I support it.
Okay. And I support as well.
Wonderful. Any questions on the endangered fish program? I could talk your ears off about the humpback chub or the Colorado pike minnow.
There's none for me.
Okay. Let's see, the next one starts on page 47 of your packets. And this one is on the Stop the Spread of Invasive Mussels Act, some additional support letters here. This bill also has kind of reoccurred over the years and has been slightly tweaked here or there. This year, Senator Bennett has introduced the 2023 version, and it is now Senate Bill 2105. And this is a very good bill. It's clarifying that Bureau of Reclamation has authority to provide assistance. So over a number of years, we've been asking and working with Bureau of Reclamation to assist with the mussels prevention at Twin Lakes and at Turquoise Reservoir. And it has largely been funded by the Home State Partners, by Aurora and Colorado Springs Utilities. So just recently, some more partners got involved, and that we're happy to say, but we just want the federal government to have clarity that they're also able to provide assistance so that that's not a barrier. And this legislation does that. And my question to FSIR is, does FSIR approve of Aurora Water supporting the Stop the Spread of Invasive Mussel Act of 2023?
Councilmember Jurinsky?
I approve.
I support as well.
Thank you. And the next topic starts on page 63. This one's PFAS. And this topic is also one of our federal priorities that did go to City Council study session and regular session. So the water utility exemption from CERCLA liability for PFAS. So there has been a little bit of movement on there. Senator Loomis introduced a bill that does just that, Senate Bill 1430. So my request to you will be if we can send a support letter on that. What moved a little bit faster this last month is that Senate Environment and Public Works, they released some draft legislation and they requested comment back. And so we did provide a comment letter for their legislation. It did not include the water utility exemption, and our comment letter asked for that. So I have 2 questions for you related to this subject. One is, does FSIR approve of Aurora Water working to amend PFAS legislation to add circular liability exemption for water utilities? I phrase that broadly so that if we are sending in similar comments whether it's the Senate EPW draft legislation or some other parallel process, that will just be saying the same thing. And my second question to you is, does FSIR approve of Aurora Water supporting specifically Senate Bill 1430, the Water Systems PFAS Liability Protection Act?
Hey, Councilmember Jurinsky, do you support question A and question B?
I support.
I support as well.
Thank you. My next topic is starts on page 72. And this one, it is Aurora Water State Lobbying Services request for proposals. So we do a 3-year cycle similar to the overall city-state lobbying services contract. That 3-year cycle seems to work very well. We're very happy with that. And we're just due for our 3-year cycle. So we'll be an open RFP. It'll be an open bid process. And we're ready to start that. Actually anticipate that that is ready for announcement next week or maybe within the next 2 weeks. And to have a new contract in place by November 1st. I did include the scope of work that is basically the same scope of services we have for the existing 3-year cycle. Roberto will recognize that scope of work. I think he helped me write that long ago. But my question to you all is, does FSIR approve of Aurora Water initiating a request for proposals for state lobbying services for Aurora Water?
Councilmember Jurinsky, do you approve?
I support.
I support as well.
I think that the next time that you will see this topic might be at regular session. I can bring you updates on how we're going with the process. But since it should be under $60,000, and if we do have 3 bids, it'll just go on a worksheet. If for some reason we don't have 3 bids, then a commentary will be done, and anticipating that will be for your October 9th regular session.
Okay.
I think that was my last topic. I do have 2 informational updates. Let me grab the one. Let's see, just in the last couple of days, in this last week, the governor's office announced that they're going to be hosting stakeholder sector focus meetings to discuss the recent Sackett versus EPA decision regarding the waters of the United States definition. So the first set of stakeholder sector meetings are going to occur on July 26th. We will have Aurora Water staff there to attend those stakeholder meetings and for any future stakeholder meetings that they anticipate through the summer and fall. The Water Quality Control Division may also host some stakeholder meetings that are related to this. It's unclear whether they're going to combine the state effort or not with the governor's office. But just wanted to let you know that these stakeholder meetings have been kicked off. We will be participating. I think the outcome will either be some legislation that will be introduced next session, or maybe it'll be a rulemaking process. But everything is just kind of all up in the air right now. Any questions on waters of the United States?
No questions from me. Councilmember Jurinsky, Councilmember Marcano.
None from me.
Okay.
And my last topic is just a reminder of the water tour. A few of you will have an email from me just asking for confirmation and your dinner selection. So if you have not done so, please look for that email. And that's my last item.
Okay, thank you so much, Kathy. I appreciate it. Regarding item number 7, miscellaneous matters for consideration, I would like to move that to the next meeting because Councilmember Zvonek is not here. So let's just discuss that November Pfizer meeting at the next meeting on August 18th. Councilmember Jurinsky, so far, is August 18th okay with you? I mean, if not, if you kind of have your calendar in front of you now, let me know.
Is there any way we could do it earlier on the 18th? Could we do like 11?
I mean, I could do it at 11, but we need to check with Councilmember Zvonek. Is with anybody on staff, would 11 o'clock work, especially Liz working with Lori and other people, our lobbyist team?
Going to confirm, but I'm sure it won't be an issue.
Okay, so let's change that meeting to on the 18th at 11 o'clock, and that works for you, Councilmember Jurinsky?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
good.
We do want to check with Councilmember Zvonek though. So if he has an issue or anything like that, let me know and then we'll kind of talk between ourselves and see what might be better too for him.
Okay. Or do you just want to shoot him a text and let him know it's been changed?
I can text him and let him know, but
Okay.
okay. All right. Is there anything else? Okay, we'll go with August 18th at 11 o'clock. Thank you, everybody, for attending the meeting, and everyone have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good
Thank
weekend.
you.
See you, everyone.